What are the commonalities among leaders who sustain excellence over an extended period of time?
Well, Dr. Karen, I just want to first say thank you so much for joining me here today, especially on short notice. I was introduced to you by a friend of mine and colleague and team member, John Garrity, and then I immediately brought your name up to my wife, Miranda, and she said, Dr. Karen Townsend, with that kind of look, and her voice kind of got excited. And I said, yeah, I was just introduced to her by John, and she said, she's incredible. You got to talk to her. So I just want to say welcome. It's so good to have you here.
Thank you for having me. And Miranda, your check is in the mail.
when she kind of stamps her seal of approval, it usually goes through. I would say, Dr. Karen, as you know, I've learned, and I'm lucky to have that. So, but I actually want to get this started by, if you're okay with it, by teeing you up to share a little bit about your story by something that you wrote to me in an email. And I'm going to share part of your actual quote and then kick it over to you to kind of finish it. Are you cool with that?
I think so, Ryan. I think so.
All right. So I asked you a question and I do this from time to time when I have people on the show, where I said, what are some of the common mistakes that interviewers make when interviewing you? Because I want to get from your perspective what mistakes they make. And I won't read your whole answer. It's really well done. I'll let you share. But one of the parts that really jumped out to me was, because you've won all these awards, you've written books, you speak on stages everywhere, but you said, I started off as a poor Black girl raised by a single parent in government housing receiving welfare. Typically, a person with that resume is not expected to achieve, but here I am. And so with that in mind, I'd love for you to share, as we get going, your story and your background and the way you think about what you've been able to achieve despite the fact of the kind of the hand you've been dealt has been a tougher one certainly than mine. And so I'd love to hear you describe your background, your story to where you are today.
Well, when you asked that question, I just really took it as an opportunity to talk about my personal journey, because here I am, I'm Dr. Karen Townsend, I'm a business owner, I've written a book, I speak, I work with leaders, and my primary function in my business is to work with leaders to create inclusive environments and build strong teams so that they can meet the needs of their diverse clients and colleagues. And because my background's education, many of my first clients were educators, and I think that was critical for me, because the reason I'm here today is because of access to education. I say I am who I am today because of God, my mama, and Kentucky State University. And I had a mother, well, first of all, God created me and he purposed me, I believe, to do the work that I do today. But I grew up with a mother who always said, you may live in the projects, but the projects don't have to live in you. And she led me to believe that regardless of where we were, that if I had a vision of greater, I could have greater and I could be greater. And I had an opportunity to go from my small town in Kentucky to Kentucky State University, which is a historically Black college. And they instilled in me a belief that I could achieve at the highest levels. And while I have other degrees from the Ohio State University and the University of Dayton, Kentucky State University was that foundation for me. It helped me to believe in myself. And when I think about my original resume, people don't typically believe that a girl who started out where I started would be where I am today, because we put labels on people. We make decisions about who a person is and what they can achieve based on zip codes. And I know my challenge to educators when I'm working with educators is, don't make a determination about a kid because of where they live. But we have so many social determinants of health, of education, of achievement and prosperity, because we put people in box based on what they look like, where they live, and their experiences. And so as we start this conversation, I want to ask everyone to think beyond the boxes, and instead of thinking of how people may be limited or at risk, think about the potential that every person has. So often we look at a person once they have that level of achievement. It's kind of like when a person climbs Mount Everest and they put the flag in the snow and everybody takes that picture. It's like, hooray, but they don't focus on the journey when they question why they even started, when they're climbing the mountain and the rope slips and their jeans tear and they're bleeding and they're calling for their mother. All of that is a part of the journey. It's been a part of my journey, and I feel a responsibility in the rooms I have the opportunities to go into and the tables that I get to sit at to help people challenge their perspectives of people who may be different from themselves, or people who don't fit the model of what we think success should look like or does look like. So that was a long response to a short question.
Well, part of the work that you do is that you work with organizations that that are, maybe they're interested in launching a diversity and inclusion group, or to just have a better awareness or understanding. But one of the things you don't recommend as a first step is training. And I remember when we were talking earlier, and we've emailed some, that surprised me a bit. And I guess I'm curious, why is that not the first step for an organization to take?
The reason I don't always lead with a diversity training suggestion is because training is easy. Transformation is a greater proposition. And a lot of times people say, we need someone to come in to do a diversity training program. And my question is, why diversity and why now? And I want to know for a couple of reasons. Is this something that was on your schedule of professional development for the year already? And if so, that's great. Or are you interested in having a diversity training program because something has happened? Did Ryan say the N-word? Has someone been accused of sexual harassment? Is there something else going on in the organization and this is a knee-jerk response? Because it's received completely differently if this is just a part of what we do versus somebody did something and we're all being punished. So I don't always say diversity training is the place to start. And I even try to get away from the word training, because I had an opportunity to meet Jane Elliott, and some of you may be familiar with Jane Elliott. She did an experiment called Brown Eyes, Blue Eyes, and she's been doing this work since the 60s. She's in her mid-80s, and she's still a firecracker, and she's my new friend. We email each other back and forth, but she was in Dayton a few years ago, and I had the opportunity to meet her. And for a person who does diversity work, she's like a rock star. And I remember going up to her and saying, "Oh, Mrs. Elliott, it's so wonderful to meet you. I do diversity training," and I was going on and on and on. And she was like, "We train dogs, we educate people." And I took that to heart, because training can be a one and done, but education is ongoing. So I want to help my clients have a complete solution. And one day of training, or recently I was asked to do a 30-minute training, that is not going to transform an organization. I think organizations have to look at their culture. Peter Drucker said, culture beats strategy on any given day. And I think what he was talking about is, before we talk about strategies or plans, we really have to take a look at our culture. As a person who does diversity education, I know sometimes if a person hears, we're going to have this day of diversity training, some people are like, kill me now, stick a fork in my eye, anything but that. And that's because there's been no organizational discussion. There's been no examination of our culture. And I think it's important for leaders to think about, why are we doing this, and what is our long-term plan? And I want to give a shout out to one of my clients who's on this call, and that's Tony Thomas with Northmont Schools. Tony recognized that our school district was evolving and we have more and more diversity, and he made it a priority that he wanted his teachers and his administrators and everyone in our district to be exposed to this. So it's not just about a day of training, it's about a cultural transformation.
So with I think you mentioned to me that you have been brought in or emailed or contacted a ton recently with current events going on. And before we get into specifics, I just like to say, how are you feeling? Like, how does this make you feel? Whether it's you watch a video, the George Floyd's video of him being murdered, and the feeling, I think that I would say it seems like everybody I've talked to have just disgust, sadness, anger. But I am curious to get your perspective and how you feel about this as someone who, you teach and you've been educating on this for a long time. And to see something like this that is opened. I feel like this is a moment it's opened more eyes than usual. And it's even kind of weird to say that. Like, I don't like having to say that, but I feel like it has. And so I'm curious first, how are you feeling in this moment, being called on so much, asked for your opinion, asked for your help, asked to educate? What's the feelings that you get through this?
So you're not supposed to cry at work. But I appreciate you asking that question, Ryan, not just because I think what we do is we ask people, how are you? And the response is, I'm fine, even if I'm not fine. And the question I've been asking people is, how are you feeling? So I appreciate you asking me how I'm feeling. If you're my Facebook friend, you would have seen a post that I put out last week that said, I am emotionally exhausted and intellectually spent. And I said that because this is my work and I'm proud to do this work, but I am also a person who is experiencing what we're talking about. And it is very difficult to witness injustice and not feel it. And the question that you asked me is a question I've been asking my clients over the last couple of weeks is, how are you feeling? Because in times like this, it's very easy to pick sides and draw a line in the sand and say you're right and you're wrong. But if we could get people to talk openly and honestly about how they're feeling, I think it would serve us tremendously. So how am I feeling? I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling angry. I'm feeling like deja vu. Here we go again. I'm feeling like, why can't we just have these conversations so we can get beyond the issue of race there? I said it out loud. Maybe I wasn't supposed to. Race is a 4-letter word, and we need to find ways to talk openly and honestly about it. I've gotten more calls over the last 2 weeks than I've received probably in the last 6 months. And the interesting thing about it is it's been from people that I've been trying to cultivate relationships with for multiple years, but now all of a sudden there's a sense of urgency. So I'm encouraged that they want to have conversations. And then sometimes I'm like, if we'd had these conversations earlier, we would be much further along. So that's how I'm feeling.
Well, I appreciate you sharing. Thank you. I wanted to bring up a story that I heard about and also ask your feelings about this and maybe some of your experiences. So thinking of I didn't fully understand like what white privilege meant or what it means, and maybe I still don't, and that's partially why we do these things. But I heard a story from Malcolm Brogdon. So Malcolm Brogdon he's an NBA player, played for the Bucks, plays for the Pacers now, and he was on a podcast and he was sharing this amazing story, which was actually amazingly sad, and it opened my eyes. So when he turned 16, he had to sign a contract with his grandfather in order to get a car. And his grandfather would give him a car if he signed this contract. And he explained what was on the contract. And what it said was, when you get pulled over, this is how we behave, right? And there were specifics about your hand on the steering wheel, and it was all about de-escalation. And he said, I would talk with my white friends, and when they got pulled over, they were arguing to get out of a ticket. We were doing everything we could to not get killed, to come home alive. And he said it, and this is the contract he signed when he's 16. He's in his like mid-20s, 30s, whatever, playing in the NBA, that his grandfather made him and his brothers sign in order to get keys to a car. And that was a moment when I listened to him tell that story, I thought, this is wild. Like I've never had that thought in my life. And so I thought it would be good to bring it up here just to get your perspective and your thoughts on the difference in the way that we view these experiences in life that just some people can't relate to at all. And maybe we would be better off if we could relate to them. So as I share that, I'm curious again, how does that make you feel? What do you think about that?
His conversation is not surprising to me at all. So can we do a little experiment, Ryan?
Sure.
Okay. I'm trying to look at the camera, because if I don't look at the camera, I know I'm looking down and I want to be engaged, but I need to look at the screen right now.
You're good.
And what I want you to do is raise your hand if your parents had a talk with you about what you need to do to not be killed by the police. I saw one hand. I see one hand, and it's the hand of an African-American man.
There's another one here.
I can't see everyone. Who else?
From KSU Career Services. I don't know your name.
That's my alma mater.
Yep.
And she's an African-American person too.
Yep.
So I just want you to think about what, if anything, that means to you. And I'm sorry, I didn't raise my hand. And we have to ask ourselves the question, why? Why are African-American families saying to their African-American sons and daughters, this is what you need to do so you don't get killed? Not so you don't get a ticket, but so you don't get killed. And here's something else I need to say. I don't want to, I'm not here to indict every police officer, because I don't paint anyone with a broad brush. Just like I don't want every African male to be painted with a broad brush that he should be feared. I don't want every police officer to be painted with the broad brush that they're not good, because you know what, if somebody's breaking into my house, that's who I want to come. But I think we also have to recognize that there are conversations going on in Black homes that aren't happening in white homes. And the question is why? And I know a lot of things, but I don't have all the answers to that. But I think dialogues like this, where people can come together and ask questions and tell their truth, will put us closer to solutions. You know, my mother said, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. And I want to be a part of the solution. And I have the privilege of being able to bring leaders together to talk about uncomfortable things. But if we don't talk about them, we can't get beyond them. And it's never my intention or approach to make anyone feel guilty or put upon or less than, but I want people to be able to have dialogue, to talk about their experiences, because when we can share those experiences, good, bad, and indifferent, we can work together to come up with solutions.
Dr. Karen, I just received a message. It was sent to me privately, so I won't say your name. And I don't know if you meant to send it private, but basically it was, I noticed that Black, person of color, and African American are all used. Is there a preference? I appreciate you asking that question because I think that's a good thing to ask. So what do you think about that, Dr. Karen?
I know that's so confusing for you white people, you know. Are they Black? Are they African American? Are they people of color? You know, I wish I had one answer for you, but it depends on who you ask. Like my grandmother, if you called her African American, she would say, "I'm not from Africa, I'm from Cadiz, Kentucky." And then there are other people who embrace African American. There are other people who say Black, and I think people of color is encompassing it. It means Black and Latinx and Asian and anything that's non-white. So I can't speak for everybody. But I told my husband, I'm just telling y'all all my business, but this is who I am, okay? I hope you all will still respect me as a professional after this. But I told my husband that I think I'm just gonna be Black, because I've been African American for a long time, but I think I'm just gonna be Black. And the reason I'm going to be Black is because I think that's the way America sees me. For instance, did you all see the CNN reporter who was arrested when he was reporting from Minneapolis? Okay, he's not African American, he's Dominican, but people look at him and they see him as Black. My neighbor is not African American, she's from the Bahamas, but when people see her, they see her as Black. She's married to a man from South Africa. They don't see him as a South African American. They see him as Black. So to make it easier for all of y'all that are listening, if you see me, I'm just Black. Okay? I can't speak for everybody else, but I'm just Black for now.
Got you. That was from Erin Dillard, by the way. She said, you can say my name. I don't mind. I'll open up Erin in a second. I just thought, I saw it pop in there. I thought, okay, it's a good question. So Dr. Karen, one of the things that I've thought about through this is like, I'm not even sure the right way to phrase this, but I think being not a racist, a lot of people like me think like, oh, that's enough, you know, just being not a racist is enough. And that's how I am. That's how I've been. I have, I think, unique experiences with, you know, one of my teammates is on the call here. One of my Black teammates, Calvin Big Circus Blackman, who we'll talk here in a little bit, is on the call. And I honestly, you know, grew up in locker rooms around it. And so I feel like I've got good exposure and experience. And so I feel like I'm just, that's how I am. That's how I feel. But that's not actually enough at this point. I think we have to do more. And so what are some of the things that you are telling your white friends that are maybe saying, Dr. Karen, I realize just being like a decent person isn't enough. What's some advice you have for people like me?
What advice do I have for a person like you is Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Principle number 5 is seek first to understand and then to be understood. So I need people like you to suspend judgment and ask questions so that you can understand. I think it's important. I learned a new term last week from my daughters. It's called performative activism. And that means when you make a statement, but there may not necessarily be any action that follows. I had a client last week and he called me because he wanted to be responsive, and he's an outstanding leader. And he said, we're gonna put Black Lives Matter on our website and on our Twitter page and on our Facebook page. I said, okay, so what are you gonna do beyond that? And he said, oh, well, I don't know. And I said, have you thought about what might happen if you put that on your website? Have you talked to your Black employees? Have you talked to your white employees? Have you thought about the fact that even though you think Black Lives Matter, there might be other people in your organization who don't think Black Lives Matter? And so we have to be very careful when we take our act, when we say things and we haven't fully thought about the action that's going to follow. So I need you, as a white person, I need you to ask me how I'm feeling, because I'm telling y'all, your Black employees are struggling right now because we've all been impacted by what happened. And we don't know if we have permission to say we've been impacted by what's happening. And so we don't say anything and it becomes internalized. I think it's important to be a person of support and not expect me to support you. And I had a number of people to call me and they were in tears. And you know, what happened to George Floyd was horrible, and my heart is broken. And they were in tears, and I felt like there was this expectation that I was going to, as they say, I'm from a small town in Kentucky, that I was going to pat them up, that I was going to make them feel better. When in that moment, I need somebody to make me feel better. And if you were outraged by what happened to George Floyd, and it was horrendous, but if that impacted you, think about how, and I can't, again, I'm not going to speak for any other African American person or Black person. I forgot I'm Black now. I'm not going to speak for any other Black person but me. So George Floyd was horrific, but that was on the heels of Ahmaud Arbery, and that was on the heels of Breonna Taylor, and that was on the heels of Tamir Wright, and that was on the heels of Susan Bland. And I mean, and there's so many. And as a Black person, this is something else. I did put this on LinkedIn, and I'm just going on and on and on, and I apologize, but you asked. As a professional, I struggled with whether or not I should post anything on LinkedIn about how I was feeling, because that's my business persona, right? This is where my clients see me. And I decided I had to say something. And one of the things I said was I'm tired of hashtags. I'm tired of hashtags because the list is too darn long. I used another word, but I don't want anybody to tell my mother I was cursing in public. So anyway, you can fill in the blank. This is really being cathartic for me. I hope it's helpful for you, but this is good for me.
I watched a video actually that I want to bring up to you that I think relates to this, of President Obama. It's a year old. You probably have watched this one, and I'm going to read his quote from it that I thought was impactful when it comes to words and then action that should follow. And this is what he said. He said, "One danger I see among young people, particularly on college campuses, and this is accelerated by social media, there is this sense sometimes the way of me making change is to be as judgmental as possible about other people, and that's enough. Like, if I tweet or hashtag about how you didn't do something right or use the wrong verb, then I can sit back and feel pretty good about myself because, man, did you see how woke I was? I called you out." And then he goes on to say later, this idea of purity and you're never compromised and you're politically woke and all that stuff, you should get over that quickly. The world is messy. There are ambiguities. People who do really good stuff have flaws. And that was just an incredible video, and to watch, and I watched and rewatched and obviously transcribed it. When you hear that, how does that make you feel?
It makes me feel that we're all walking this tightrope that we want to say. We know we need to say something, but sometimes we don't know what to say and we don't know how to say it. And so sometimes if we're not sure what to say or how to say it, then we don't say anything. And I want my work to be that I can create an environment where people feel comfortable enough to ask the questions and have the dialogue. Whenever I do presentations, I have a list of guiding principles, and they're things like participate, be open and honest, listen without judging, maintain confidentiality. But I always ask people, what might make it hard to be open and honest when you're having a conversation about these hard topics? And the answers I hear over and over again are, I don't want to offend anyone. I don't want people to judge me. I don't want to be viewed as a racist. And so because of that, people are like, their lips are zipped and they don't say anything. And I always encourage them to use this time we have together to ask those questions with the understanding that anything that is asked or said or any issue that is raised is for the purpose of learning. Because if we can't come together in environments like this and ask the questions, we're not going to ask them out there. So why don't we ask them here and agree that anything that I'm asking, it's so I can learn. So before you open it up for questions from the audience, can everybody raise their hand and say, anything I asked today is so I can learn? I'll raise my hand. And that if someone doesn't say it quite right, we won't crucify them, we'll show them grace. Okay.
So speaking of that, Dr. Karen, I just got a private one, and this person asked to stay anonymous, which is fine. They said it's from a white guy. Candidly, as a white male, I want to learn and better understand / respect the use of the N and B words in the Black culture. What do those words mean to you when you hear it from another Black person?
Again, I cannot speak for all Black people. Those are not words that are part of my vocabulary. And I think that is another thing that's confusing for white people, because you hear Black people use it, but you know good and darn well if you use it, you're going to be vilified. So I would just say, from my perspective, it's not a word that I use. And please, white people, don't use it with the R or the A on the end, whatever, just stay away from it. Yeah. But if I could offer any explanation about it, I would say when some Black people use that word, it's what I would call in-tribe privilege. Do you know what that means? It's kind of like, if you talk about my sister, I'm gonna beat you down, okay? But I can talk about my sister all day long.
Yeah.
You get that?
Yeah.
And again, for me, those aren't words that I use. I think I'm smart enough to have other words to use, so I'm not gonna use those words.
Does it bother you when others do, though, or do you say that's okay? That's part of the kind of the in-tribe privilege.
Well, if they say it in my presence, I say, please don't use that word.
Gotcha. Okay.
And the B word also, because I hate it when women refer to themselves that way. I just don't. But again, I'm not speaking for all Black people.
Sure.
I'm speaking for me.
Yeah, I think today, that's another thing about this is that I just want your thoughts. Like, I don't want you to feel like you have to represent. That's the other thing too, is like, it's this crazy pressure or a weird feeling to feel like you have to represent an entire race. Like, I could never do that. I would never try to ask anybody to do that. So I do just want to get your feelings on it, but I still appreciate you saying that.
Ryan, before you go on, okay. Let's stick there for just a minute. When you were asking what can white people do, don't expect the one Black person in your office to speak for every Black person in the world. Many years ago, my husband and I and some friends, we went to see Tina Turner at Riverbend near Cincinnati.
Mm-hmm.
And the audience was probably 98% white. And so we were sitting there waiting for the show to start. And this, I don't know, elderly white woman, she tapped me on the shoulder and she said, "Excuse me, honey, where are all the Black people?" And I said, "You know, ma'am, I'm only one of 13 million in America. I'm not sure where they are." But it doesn't just happen at Tina Turner concerts. It happens in our places of work. It happens in our, in our associations. It happens in our clubs. If you are one of only a few, you're expected to speak for the entire group. And I can't speak for everybody. I can't speak for everybody. I can't always speak for myself. So.
Yeah. You mentioned to me a story that I want you to tell about coming to grips with our own biases. And I think you labeled it the story of prejudice in the produce aisle. Can you share that story?
Okay, so let me frame it like this. A lot of times when I'm teaching, people come to me and they say, "Oh, I'm not biased, I'm not prejudiced," and I think they say that believing they're going to get a gold star. And when they say that to me, "I'm not biased" or "I'm not prejudiced," I say, "Well, you know what? I want to be where you are." Because we all have biases and prejudices. That's not the problem. The problem is when you start to act on them. The problem is when you don't do some self-examination and ask, is what I'm thinking right now valid? And what is it based on? So I did mention that I do diversity education, right? Did you all hear me say that? Okay. So someone said you teach best what you most need to learn. So I've been doing this for like 20 plus years and I'm still teaching it because I guess I'm still trying to get it right. And I can remember one day I was at the grocery store, went after work just to pick something up for dinner. And I was walking down the grocery aisle and coming towards me was this white guy and he had on one of those white t-shirts with no sleeves. What do you call those, Ryan? You know?
A wife beater?
Okay, that's another class, but yeah, okay. So he had on the wife beater shirt.
Are you trying to set me up here or what?
No. So he has on the wife beater shirt, and he had tattoos all up and down his arms. Do you know what those are called?
Tattoos? A sleeve?
Sleeves. Okay. So
I think you're trying to get me like fired here.
No. So I'm looking.
Aaron, my mom would not let me say that either. I can't believe Dr. Karen got me to say that. Anyway, go ahead.
So coming towards me down the aisle is this white guy in a wife beater shirt with sleeves, tattooed arms up and down. And in my mind, because I would never say it out loud, right? Because I'm a diversity professional. But in my mind, I was like, ugh. And then I looked down and I saw he had a child with him. And I thought, oh my gosh, he's procreated. Because, we all know tattooed people with, white beater shirts on don't make good parents, right? But I didn't say that out loud. I would never say that out loud, but it was in here. So I'm looking at him, and he's procreated, he's got this kid with him, I'm having this internal dialogue, and all of a sudden the little boy falls down and he's crying. And the man in the wife beater shirt with the tattooed arms scoops up the little boy and goes, "It's okay, buddy, let daddy kiss it." Hold on, my computer's about to die. Okay, good.
Right.
So for anyone who didn't think this was live. So anyway, so he scoops up.
Uh-oh. Let me, hopefully she joins us again soon. Sorry about that. Let me, let's do a quick audible here. Hey, Calvin, I see you. There you are, bud.
Yeah.
I'm curious too, like you're obviously a guy that we've been friends since college, at our days together at Miami, and you can jump in here until she comes back. Cause I was going to have you speak up at one point anyway, so we can just start a little bit early. I was curious about how you're feeling in this moment. Like you work for a great company with a great leader, who I think cares about this a lot at the job center, and you're, I know, an integral part of that. But how has the current situation made you feel?
For me, I mean, it's definitely been. I watched the video once and I couldn't watch it again. But I can relate to what you probably hear, a lot of Black males say. Like, the first thing I told Kyle, who's our CEO, for those who don't know, and he's a white male, I said, he had reached out to me asking some questions, and I said, the first thing, when I get pulled over, I put my hands at 10 and 2, and we all have the old SHIT moment when we see the cops behind us. We all do. But at some point, for me, it goes to another level, especially when I'm getting pulled over. It's one of those, okay, and this is kind of something I was preparing myself for when you called on me. But it's like kind of the nature versus nurture thing. And, what is this officer's, what are his intentions when he comes to the window, what past experiences, what has he been taught in life, and is that going to be something that's going to be shown, on me for the beliefs and thoughts that he has, towards me, or is he going to be a guy that's, more like one of the guys that I've spent time with as a teammate in the locker room, who's going to be understanding and accepting, and this is going to be a peaceful exchange, and I'm going to get my fine and go about my way. So, I definitely look at it from that angle and can definitely relate. But I also, I know there's a lot more that goes into it, but and I can elaborate a little bit more. But I see Dr. Karen is back, and I definitely want to hear the rest of this story.
Thank you, Calvin, for jumping in a little early. Dr. Karen, we had to audible for a brief moment, but we're back. So go ahead.
I apologize. So I was saying, the man with the tattooed arms and the little boy, he scooped him up and said, "It's okay, buddy, let daddy kiss it." And I was like, oh, he's the best dad in the world. And he went from me thinking, ick, who is this person, to he's the best dad in the world, because I was able to see him display this act of kindness. And he had an opportunity to show his full humanity. And it wasn't what I saw initially. And how many of us make a judgment about a person based on what we see initially, and we don't know their whole story. And I did that. And I said, I'm a diversity educator, right? I did that. And it's my job to help people be open and affirming and valuing of people who are different. And if I did that, what about the rest of us? It's probably just me, I'm sure. I'm the only one on this call that has personal biases. I own that. That's why I keep doing this work.
Well, I want to ask one more question before I open it up, and this is discrimination in the workplace. So there, Harvard, there's some research I read from Harvard Business School states that companies are more than twice as likely to call minority applicants for interviews if they submit what they deemed as whitened resumes, than candidates who reveal their race. And this discriminatory practice is just as strong for businesses that claim to value diversities as those that don't. I got to believe this comes up in your line of work where you hear about this, where people are feeling the need to, however you would define as whiten your resume, increases the odds of getting a call back. And the fact that that's something I actually have to say that I read in a Harvard Business School study is rough. Terrible. How does that make you feel? And then what have you what have you, are there any things you've done to try to help eliminate that?
Well, I think again, this is one of those extra things that I have felt as a Black person. And I haven't done a resume in a long time because I work for myself. But I know that people who look like me often remove certain things from their resume that would identify them as Black. Like if they're a member of a specific service organization, they're oftentimes just based on names, and that was another part of the Harvard study, that names that sounded Black got less callbacks, and they actually took more white sounding names and Black sounding names and gave them the same credentials, same college, same experience, and they found that the person that had the more Black sounding name didn't get an interview. So what that says is, I may not even get an opportunity to get a job because of my name, the perception of my name. And then as it relates to discrimination in the workplace, you remember when terrorism was this big thing and we were afraid that people were going to try to sneak bombs on planes, and we were all told, if you see something, say something. I think as leaders in organizations, if you see something that's not quite right, say something. Because we have to challenge insensitive and inappropriate behavior, even if it's not about my group. For instance, many years ago, I was able to live the American dream. Remember, I'm the girl that grew up in the projects. So one of the greatest joys and blessings of my life was to be able to build a house from the ground up. I mean, we saw them dig the hole and pour the concrete for the basement. And I mean, we would go every day just to see how they were coming along, progressing with the house. And so the house was finished and we were doing the final walkthrough, and we were, looking at anything that needed to be corrected. And so in the kitchen, we had hardwood floors and some of them were kind of wavy. So I said to our contractor, these boards aren't right. Could you please replace these? And he said to me, "Them damn Mexicans, you just can't depend on them." And I said, whoa. I said, you cannot speak about any group of people like that in my presence. Because I'm wondering, if you feel free to say them damn Mexicans, what were you saying about my group? And it kind of took him, he took a step back, but I'm not Mexican. But what he said was insensitive and discriminatory. So I said something. And so as leaders, if you see something, say something. If it's not appropriate, you have to challenge each other. And that's the way we can get to, we talk about social justice and racial equity. It can't just be me. I need you. I need people who look like you. I'm not talking about you, Calvin. I'm talking about Ryan. Okay, just to be clear.
The quote that reminds me of Dr. Karen is the Edmund Burke quote: "The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good." The quote is, "For good men," I would switch it to, "is for good people to do nothing." And I think that's like that. I'm glad that you said that. That makes so much sense from a leadership perspective, because it's easier. It would have been easier for you and less confrontational for you to just kind of like ignore it and keep walking. But instead you did the harder thing, the right thing, that, we all could probably look in the mirror and say, I've taken the easy route on that before. I've heard that language. I've heard people talk like that, and I just kind of keep it moving and I leave and go to dinner, as opposed to doing the right thing, which you may have impacted that builder or contractor's life to maybe he doesn't say that anymore, maybe doesn't think that anymore. And that's the hard thing, though. And I think that's what's commendable. And that's actually what leadership's all about, is having the guts and the willingness to do that, because it's hard. And it's easier just to keep it moving. And that's what, unfortunately, probably a lot of people do. All right. I want to,
Well, and
go ahead.
the other thing for me is, the other thing for me is, and it goes back to what we were like. I'm going to give you some statistics, and I'm going to give you some theories, and yada yada yada. This work is less about head work, and it's more about heart work.
Yep.
Because if I can impact how you're feeling, if I can get you to hear the experiences of people who are different from you, then it goes a whole lot further, and it makes more sense.
Yep, exactly. Well, I want to thank you. I want to open it up. We went a little bit longer than I planned, but that's because your stuff is good. I appreciate it. It's helpful. I want to open up now. Calvin, you were talking, and I'm going to tell it over to Calvin, and then Joe, I'm coming to you. So you guys can get ready to go. I'll unmute you, Calvin. You unmute yourself, and fire away, bud.
Yeah, so I guess kind of going back to, I have a couple things, and I'll kind of go back to what I was talking about. Growing up, being as a Black male, I was, if you want to call it privileged. I went to private school, and obviously went on to Miami. So I grew up in a predominantly white schools my entire life, and as a kid was told, you act white. You know what I mean? And a lot of the things you hear, and it's not until you get older that you kind of look back and it's like, what does that truly mean? Because I'm educated and I enunciate when I speak and I present myself well because that's how I was taught. Because we all know, yes, there are people of lower economic status in the Black community and in the white community who misrepresent our races for whatever reason because they know that is the environment that they are raised in. And so for me, it's been always been, present myself the best way that I can. But as Dr. Karen said, when I come to work, when I get hired at a job and I'm going to be, the minority most of the time, like I am definitely conscious of every move and every action that I take because I don't want that perception for me to be labeled. And so every single day, again, I do have to make sure I show up earlier than everyone else. I do go that extra mile. And should it be that way because of outside influences? No, it should be that way because that's the way I want to be. But the way society is, that's just how that's just the way that, what I have to be conscious of. So to that point, and my last question is, and this is maybe a question for you, Ryan, and anyone else, who's white that's on the call, do you have any racist friends? And if so, do you know of them? And even to a deeper point, do you have any friends who you've ever heard use the N-word, not in behind closed doors? And is that something, if you've heard it, how have you approached that situation when it arose? Do you address it? Because we know it's at the dinner table. That's a hard thing to be the oddball to say, we shouldn't use that word. But that's really kind of my question for yourself or anyone else, if you've been in that situation.
Yeah, I'm glad you said it because there's definitely been times when I've heard it and have not said a word. Just sit there. Dude, I did the opposite of what Dr. Karen did with her contractor. And you're obviously not. I say you, and I mean me. Not proud of those moments because you take the easy route of not rocking the boat. Maybe there's a group of guys and they say something like that is wrong, and you just kind of sit there and stay quiet. I think that's one of the really good things that could come out of this is to say, like, let's all develop some guts, some leadership when it comes to think about, hey, okay, I can't change what happened back here in the past, but I can change how I just choose to respond in the future, to say, like, let's actually have an uncomfortable conversation, like be willing to. I always talk about, Calvin, of stretching the zone of competency and comfort. Well,
right.
If all of a sudden a friend of yours speaks like that and, you don't say anything, then you're complicit, and that's bad. And so
Right.
I think one thing that we could all probably take from this is, hey, we've all made mistakes. We've all probably not done the right thing when we should have. Now, how will you choose to behave moving forward? And that's why we have conversations like this. This is exactly why we do this, and why it's good, Calvin, for you to bring up stuff like this, because it's saying, like, are you going to choose the easy route, or are you going to take the little bit more confrontational route? And what are you going to do? And I think that's really good for us to talk about this stuff.
Yeah.
Hey, Ryan, can I add on to something that Calvin said? Or let me ask you, Calvin, have you ever had in your experience that someone said to you, well, Calvin, you're not like the others?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
And so I've had people say that to me, Karen, you're not like the others, or and what I think they are saying is, I don't see you as a stereotypical image that I have of Black people.
Right.
But when people have said that to me, I don't see you, you're different, you know, you're not like the others. I ask them, what do you mean by that? Because most of the people in my circle are college educated, married, moms, wives, leaders in their community. So I don't see myself as an anomaly. And so you shouldn't see me as an anomaly either. The other thing that kind of grates my nerves is when people say, I don't know, Calvin, if you've had this experience, I don't see you as a Black person.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm picking on Calvin because I know his mic's open and I know him. Any other Black people on the call? Has anybody ever said that to you? Raise your hand. I don't see you as a Black person. Look at those hands.
I see you at I'm not sure your name, KSU Career Services. I've just unmuted you, so you can unmute yourself if you want to speak up. I'm sorry, I don't know your name. What's your name?
Hi, I'm Tanika East. I'm the Associate Director of Career Professional Development, and I was invited to this call by our alumnus, Dr. Townsend. It's very difficult being the only one, whether you're the only one at the table or you're the only one in the room. And it is, it's a continuous cycle. They say, well, you're not like, whether it's your hair, whether it's your tone, whether it's the way you dress, if they haven't had lack thereof encounters with African American or Black people, they respond differently.
Yeah. So the thing for me is when you say you don't see me as a Black person, and I am Black, but what if I were to say to, there's somebody named Ken Elrich. Now let's pick on Ken. Well, Ken, what if I were to say to you, I don't see you as a man? How would you feel about that? Ken, I don't see you as a man.
Well, I don't know how I'd take that. That would be I don't know how I would take that.
And I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I want you all to think about that statement, because I am Black, that's part of who I am. And if you say you don't see me as Black, then you don't see me. I mean, some of y'all look kind of swirly, so you may be mixed with something else too, but you know, I see you, and your race is a part of who you are, and we shouldn't have to part of who we are. But unfortunately, that is one of the issues that we can't.
Are you back? Okay, we had a little bit of Wi-Fi issue, I think. It looks like you're back, Dr. Townsend. You good? I hope.
Can you hear me?
I can. It's breaking up a little bit, but yeah. Okay, you back? It looks good now. Oh no, it's okay. I'm just hopefully it just sometimes this happens. It adjusts and comes back. I hope.
She didn't see me as a man. That's what happened.
Ken, you just ruined it, man. You just ruined it for us.
That was my punishment. That was the punishment.
No, okay, good. You're back. You're back. I wanted to go. I'm muting Joe Nykirk. Joe, do you want to unmute yourself? There you go, and fire away, bud.
Yeah. Thanks, Ryan, for putting this together, and thank you, Dr. Townsend, for sharing great stories and information. I really enjoyed what you were saying about, the training, instead of training, going with transformation and really looking at why are you doing this? And I think that, I've been naive to this subject, to the subject of race and social inequalities for a long time, fearful about them as well, and probably just ignorant myself. And I want to make sure it's the right time. It's unfortunately taken me, far too many of these instances, like what happened with George Floyd, to get to this point. But I want to know, as a white male in a position of power, with the people that I manage, what is the best way to go about having conversations about race and inequalities and injustices with the people that I do manage?
I think you should call me after this call and schedule. I'm doing these dialogues called Can We Talk? Creating a safe place to have these conversations, because I don't want you to feel compelled to do something that you may not know how to do. And I think sometimes people feel thrust into this place of responsibility. You're not a physician, so you wouldn't try to give medical advice to your team, So there are people out here who do the work. So call on us. A book that was written, I think, in 2006. And the name of it is Uprooting Racism. I'll put it in the chat. Uprooting Racism, How White People Can Work for Social Justice. And it really talks about things that white people can do to be allies. And some of them are, friends, how they're feeling, doing your own research to learn more. Notice racist, be strategic, really make a commitment to learning more yourself and giving people in your organization opportunities to talk. But I think the time for silence has gotten us to this place. And if we really want to be proactive and make a difference, we can't just look at this as a moment in time. We need to use this as a catalyst for a movement. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Love it.
It does.
I appreciate it. Let's try to squeeze one more in. Hopefully the Wi-Fi hangs with us. Carrie, you written in the chat, and I'm unmuting you, so unmute yourself. If you can jump on video, that'd be great. A teammate of mine, are you able to ask your question, or do you want me to read it? If you there, Carrie?
Oh, I am.
There you go.
I'll unmute myself because I'm actually in my car.
Okay.
I was recently having a conversation with an HR person that I'm very close to about the fact that for as many years as I can remember, there has always been an issue of we want to hire more minorities. And my question to him was, what is the obstacle for that happening? Because they've been talking about it, companies have been talking about it for years. And his comment was that oftentimes job postings, job descriptions are more focused on a white person. And so a minority person might not feel comfortable applying for that. I'm not sure how you change that, but I thought that that was a really interesting comment. He's been in HR maybe 10 years, but he said that with the companies that he has been working for, they have been trying to be more aware of the way they write job descriptions so that everyone feels comfortable applying for a position that might be open that they are truly qualified for. Does that make sense, Karen Townsend?
So you went in a whole different direction than I thought you were going to, because a lot of times I hear, well, we want to hire more, but we can't find them. This is really the first time I've heard someone say that the job description was written in a way that wasn't attractive to minority candidates. So that's a new one for me. But if that is in fact the concern, then I would say have a conversation with the underrepresented Black already there and ask for their feedback. And the other thing is, if you truly are on this quest to increase representation in your organizations, do some things differently. Because if you continue to look in the places that you've always looked, you might miss people. Is a clone of me. Her name is Jackie. I'm African American, she's African American. I'm female, she's female. We're in the same sorority. We both have 2 kids. We go to the same church. We both have highlights in our hair. We're like clones. And if I want a diverse experience, I'm not going to get it having a conversation with Jackie. If I'm trying to broaden my reach, I've got to step outside my personal Rolodex if I want to bring some different people to the party. For instance, in the work that I'm doing, I want to be able to model diversity. So I need to I'm looking for a few good white guys to join my team. I'm not calling Calvin because he's Black. I'm discriminating against you, Calvin. I'm calling Ken because he's a white guy. Maybe someone in his network has the qualifications that I'm looking for, and I don't know them because I don't necessarily travel in those circles. So use the resources that you have. I cannot reflect the experiences of people other than my own. One of the tools I suggest to my clients is make sure you have some cultural informants in your circle. And a cultural informant is someone outside your demographic who can give you insight on their culture. I was asked once to speak to a group of Jewish women. I'm not Jewish. I'm Baptist born, Baptist bred. When I die, I'll be a Baptist dead. I didn't know the unique things of the Jewish culture, but I have a friend who's Jewish. And I called her and I said, what do I need to know? Tell me some things that are important to Jewish women. What's relevant for your community? And because I use my cultural informant, I was able to meet that client where they were. So if we're looking to hire, recruit, retain, develop diverse candidates, we need to be in conversation with diverse people. And I hope that's helpful and makes sense.
Most definitely. Dr. Karen, I just want to thank you. I mean, the purpose of this today was to have a dialogue and sharing session designed to create a safe space for people to candidly, openly, and honestly discuss how they've been impacted and how they feel and what they think and actions to take. And your involvement and vulnerability and honesty and authenticity is just awesome. And I'm very grateful for you and for your willingness to do this. I know you're intellectually spent, you're getting inundated, but that does, in a way, I'm happy that is happening because I want more people to talk to you. I want your voice, your beliefs, your feelings exposed to more people. I think if that happens, we'll all be better off. So just want to commend you and acknowledge that. And thank you so much for being here today.
Can I say a couple of things before we go?
Sure.
Number one, I put my email in the chat if anybody wants to reach out to me. And Ryan, I want to thank you for hosting this forum. as a white male to use your platform to have this conversation. And I hope that something that I've shared will be of value to the people who are on the call. And I especially want to thank you for doing it. And I know this was your motivation, Ryan, to do it today in celebration of Juneteenth.
Yes.
That's why you did it, right?
Yeah, and I think it is worth us talking about to bring up the history of Juneteenth and what Juneteenth is all about. And quite frankly, it was good to learn about that. Like June 19th, 1865, enslaved African Americans were notified of their freedom by Union troops in Galveston Bay, Texas, 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation was issued. And I think it is good for us to understand the history and the importance of this specific day. And I'm glad we could do it on this day. Normally, I like to make things timeless so that they're impactful all the time, and I believe this is. But yeah, there's big significance upon this day for sure.
Well, thank you. And thanks to everyone who has been a part of this conversation.
Thank you so much. And I really appreciate everybody for being here. It's good to see your smiling faces and willingness to open your mind, listen, learn. And I think that's the moving forward, is to continue to do that and surround yourself with great people like Dr. Townsend. And yeah, I just want to thank everybody for being here. Thank you, Dr. Townsend. It was fantastic.
Thank you. Have a fabulous day.
All right.
Happy Juneteenth.
All right. You too. See ya.